our single selection is deeper and broader than any other store by a factor of probably 2 or 3. Our bankroll is larger. There are a lot of collections that come in where I look at the collection. We offer, let's say, $4,500. The next highest offer is $2,500 because they probably $2,500 is probably what they had in the safe that day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Match Slip Podcast. My name is Frank. I'm your host of the show. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking with the owner of Level Up Games, Luke, out in Glen Burnie, Maryland. You may recognize that name. We have had a store from Glen Burnie, Maryland on the show, Games and Stuff. If you'd like to check out that episode, that was recorded earlier on during the Match Slip's tenure into this year-plus venture of interviewing game stores. But with that out of the way, I'd like to welcome Luke onto the program today. Luke, how are you?
I'm great. How's it going?
Doing well. I'm glad we had the time to discuss your store today. So what can you tell us, Luke, a little bit about yourself before we get into the store?
So I'm 30, I guess. I started playing card games when I was 6 years old. I remember one day in kindergarten, we were lining up to leave the classroom, and the person in front of me turned around and he was like, "Do you have any Pokemon cards?" And I was like, "No." So I remember he had a Rhyhorn from Jungle that he pulled out of his pocket. He shows me this Rhyhorn and he goes, "Gotta catch them all." And then a week or two later, I bought my first booster pack at Toys R Us and started playing Pokemon. I played Pokemon from, I guess I was about 8 to 12. Took a little hiatus from cards then started playing Magic again when I was 16. And then realized I'm a lot better and enjoy buying and selling the cards more than actually playing the game because I'm not great at the game. So then I started, trading basically to make a little extra income in college, collect some cool cards, and that kind of snowballed into eventually I graduated, worked at a nursing school for 2 years, but that was a little boring. So I started working for a company that did Magic Grand Prix. Then did those and was online only. Eventually, that company bought a store. That store closed, and I partnered with someone who I had met through the Grand Prix circuit to start Level Up Games.
So how old were you when you first made the transition into the store? So you said you're 30 now, so how many years back before the store started?
So this Level Up Games specifically started in 2021. Before that, there was another store that people might recognize that was kind of an institution on the East Coast, MTG First. They used to hold, if people are familiar with the Quest for Power series that was held here, we're actually in literally the same location. Right now, the office I'm sitting in used to be the stock room that used to have sealed product in it. We're in literally the same location. And that the company that I was a part of before Level Up Games came into MTG First in 2019, I believe. So I've been, actually in a store since about 5 years now. But I was it was 2018, so I was 24 when I made the transition from working a more traditional job to doing cards full time, working for a company that just did cards.
How do you feel since transitioning into doing the store full time now, and what has that transition been like from going from a regular job into now essentially running your own business at 30?
So I would say my path towards a store has been very different than most people's. Most of the time, people will either work for a store, eventually open their own, or they'll start in a brick and mortar and then branch out once they get large enough into doing Grand Prix. We also vended the Star City circuit. So most of the time, that's an expansion. But for me, it was the other way around because the company that I worked for before this was online only and just did the Grand Prix circuit, which was kind of out of the ordinary, but that circuit was large enough. There was enough going on there business-wise that you could very much just do Grand Prix, run an online business out of a basement, and they were often enough that we basically could come close to having a brick and mortar. It's just that brick and mortar was only existed for 3 days in a given city and then would move. And obviously the inventory we would carry would be different than a normal store because you can't bring 600,000 cards to a GP with you. But so my journey was different. We started doing these larger circuits, and then eventually that company acquired a store, and then my former business partner and I started Level Up Games here. So it's been quite the ride. It's for a very long time, I said that I would never want a brick and mortar. I would never want a store because there's just a lot more to keep track of, a lot more going on in having a brick and mortar versus operating solely online. Obviously, there were advantages to having a brick and mortar. It's much easier. Previously, we would have to, it was kind of luck of the draw at GPs or finding collections through various social media or something like that. But now people walk in the store every day to sell cards. So on the one hand, there's convenience there. It also means that we can carry a much wider range of inventory than we could when it was just GPs and just events, because we have enough retail space. We have people that come in that both need 3 duels for their legacy deck, but also need 3 random bulk rares for their commander deck, which is not something you can provide people when you're doing shows just because of the logistics around it. So it's been an interesting journey.
And, I've heard people mention that opening up the brick and mortar store after being online, the advantages that allows even from a supplier level with ordering product. Have you experienced, like, having been involved in both, seeing those changes and why making the leap into the brick and mortar store, even though there's a lot of costs involved with that, is the supplier and like getting product wise, is it that significant?
So 3 or 4 years ago, I would say yes. Basically when Wizards switched away from there being a certain allocation that you would get from Wizards, so you would get, I'm making up these numbers, but your allocation would be, let's say 4 cases from Wizards that you would get at a reduced rate, something like around $60-$65 a box or something like that. They did away with that. Now all of the product comes from distributors. So all of the cost basis on every Magic product has increased. And while at the same time, the appetite for paying more for Magic product hasn't really followed that same trend. So I would say a couple years ago, absolutely, there's a significant advantage having a brick and mortar because you can get product. Also, back then you could open sealed product profitably as a store, which was kind of the dream of it. Worst case scenario, you have 100 extra boxes. You can just crack them and because of how much cost was and the fact that people still actually played standard then, you could get your money out and often actually profit. Or if you had some extra capital, you could just buy some more cases from the distributor, crack those. Things were much easier. Unfortunately, I got into the brick and mortar part of the game towards the end of that. Now, honestly, unless you're willing to climb a very, very, very steep hill, or you start with extremely deep pockets, it's the sealed product access, honestly, is not much of a benefit. The margin on sealed has always worse than singles, but that margin is just getting eroded smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And while there are products that you win on, like, for example, collector boosters, outside of collector boosters, it's really, really difficult to make any reasonable amount of money on sealed product because because cost has increased, but also the things that used to drive people to buy sealed product, like standard, people aren't really playing standard in paper anymore. So the things driving people to buy sealed product, which I think Wizards has caught on with by adding the bonus sheets and all of those kind of things, people don't care about the standard staple that is now $2 because nobody plays paper standard. Instead, they're opening product because they want to get the special guest show and tell or something like that for their commander deck, or maybe legacy or something like that. So I don't think it's much of an advantage anymore, to be honest. If anything, it's kind of a liability because there have been a couple sets now where cost on the set, for example, Commander Masters is probably the whipping boy of any Magic set in the past couple years. Cost on that was so high that what you had to charge to make anything, I think people assumed that there was some kind of super markup price gouging on it, that they assumed that just a normal box of Commander Masters cost on that would be maybe $180 or something like that. But if I remember correctly, cost on one of those boxes was $260 or $270, and on release you could get them on TCG for like $280. So I think people see the price of sealed product these days, and they're used to things with the kind of price tags that some of the newer sealed product has, those being inflated, quote unquote. But that's just what the products cost. So personally, I'm pretty low on sealed product. Even over these 5 years, we've just been burned enough times that there isn't really much incentive to do a whole lot of it. I mean, we do it and it sells, but for selling one box of the Assassin's Creed play boosters, selling one Underground Sea is the same as, profit-wise, more or less, as selling like 7 of the Beyond boosters. So it's really not attractive at all. The seal that does well for us is just like random packs from all across time. There's probably 20, 25 different packs in the pack feeder, ranging from the oldest Fallen Empires. There's a big gap between that and the next oldest, but the seal that people are most excited to buy, and the seal that ultimately is most profitable, is when people come in and they get one pack of Battle Bond, a pack of Dominaria Remastered. They just kind of get one of 5 different packs, and that's where sealed product is actually good. Outside of that, there's no money to be made on it, and even if you were to try to mark it up a little bit in store, people can just go to Amazon and buy it direct from Wizards. So I don't really see sealed as being much of an incentive anymore.
And why do you think that people are buying, like you mentioned, the individual packs from various sets rather than buying, say, the booster boxes like we used to see with new sets in the past, as a part one to the question? And then as a part two, What is it from your standpoint that, when you look at across all the various games out there, are you only seeing Magic being low on the margin side of things for sealed product, or is that across all games?
So to answer part one, I think what draws people to the just murderer's row of individual packs, a lot of it has to do with the kind of clientele that we have locally. In this area, there were a lot of people that are very deeply enfranchised already. So they really, what matters to them is there will be 3 or 4 cards in a new set that come out that matter to them. They'll buy those 3 or 4 singles. Maybe they're a legacy player and there's a special guest version of Show and Tell that's, the borderless full art now that they want to change their Conspiracy 2 ones into that one. Or we have one client who has a complete collection of pretty much anything you could want, but he's a fan of the borderless version. So whenever a borderless version of something comes out that he doesn't already have, he'll get that. So the newer products just don't appeal to a lot of our locals because they're so deeply enfranchised and because they know what they like, and they've been around long enough that the kind of whimsy of opening packs is kind of gone because they've been opening packs for 15, 20 years. But having the murderer's row of packs means that people can, part of it's nostalgia. There are definitely certain packs sell better than others, even when the EV in those packs isn't as good. Like Pokemon Evolutions, that set, the hits are not huge, but those packs just sell and sell and sell and sell and sell because it's the closest you can get to opening a base set pack without paying $300. So I think the success of those comes down to just the kind of clientele that we have. We certainly do sell booster boxes, but outside of the first window of release, like a box of Rivals of Ixalan is going to sell basically as fast as a box of, actually Rivals of Ixalan will sell faster than a box of like Murders at Markov Manor because those sets appeal more to people. And a lot of those boxes that they're not old enough that they're like Shadowmoor, that they're out of reach, but they're old enough that there's a decent number of people who weren't playing then. So there's still some kind of novelty factor to them. For the second part of the question, it's some games are better than others for sure. The margins on Magic are probably the second worst of any game. The worst is Yu-Gi-Oh! Partially because the boxes are cheaper, and a Yu-Gi-Oh! Box, depending on whether it's a core set or an expansion set, as long as it isn't one of their supplemental sets that would be similar to like a Shining Fates in Pokemon or like Modern Horizons 3, their main just standard boxes generally sell for between $60 to $70, but cost on them is $50. So the margin is similar to Magic, but the boxes are just cheaper. So just in terms of absolute value of profit on the box, it's very small. The other thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is they reprint things so much that keeping older Yu-Gi-Oh! Product is suicide, because you're going to end up with a box where for example, there's a set called Synchro Storm where there was a card in it that was a tournament staple. It was about $80. The boxes were worth $40 to $45 a couple months after that, after a couple more sets had come out. So those boxes, basically, you either doubled your money because you got a Baron, or you lost all of your money because the rest of the set was worthless. But as Konami does, which is great for players, they reprint like there's no tomorrow. So they reprinted Baron twice in the past year, and Baron's now literally 40 cents, which makes it really hard to want to keep any Yu-Gi-Oh stock for an extended period, because the good cards are just going to get power crept or reprinted, or everybody's going to be stuck with them, and you're going to end up with Synchro Storm was like literally $29.99 on TCG for a little bit. So some games are better than others. The Pokemon margins are better than Magic. Some of the newer games, especially the ones made by Bandai, the margins are much better, but that's due to Bandai not printing enough. So secondary market just increases the price of the box. Actually, today I got a shipment of the 6th One Piece set, and it is the first time that I have put a One Piece box in the system below MSRP. MSRP is 110 to 115, and that set, because it ended up not having a lot of tournament relevant cards, and it's been kind of eclipsed collector wise by some of the more recent sets. So that box went in the system at $99.99. Granted, cost on it, that margin is still better than the margin for pretty much any other game, but Bandai's a real gamble. Overall, sealed product is just, it isn't what it used to be. I think a lot of people have realized, a lot of the companies have realized that why would we sell boxes to stores for like $67 for a Magic box? Why would we sell it to them for $67 when we can just sell it on Amazon for the amount that they're actually selling it for? So sealed in general just isn't what it used to be. There's certainly there are diamonds in the rough. There are definitely boxes that I can buy on TCG, pack out, make a decent amount, or there are boxes that still have a pretty decent amount of value. Pokemon sets that, like Evolving Skies, where you get a collection that happened to have some tins in it that had Evolving Skies in it, and the Evolving Skies sells before we can put it on the shelf because someone in the store sees that there's Evolving Skies. So it's hard. Personally, I just am not as deep on sealed product as I used to be because the risk is too high and the margin just isn't there.
And what are you seeing as like the most popular games that players at your store are clamoring for? Because with those, low margins, and like you mentioned, you're feeling like it not being worth it anymore. How do you determine what to buy? I mean, are the players from those various games, like what type of demand are they asking for sealed product? Or is it just really where a lot of stores I hear make their profit margin from is the singles?
It's almost universally singles. There were the Bandai games, people do clamor for sealed product because Bandai always has distribution issues in every single game it has ever made. It's had distribution issues, whether that's intentional or not, who knows, but it does mean that the cards become, when One Piece came out, it was like Pokemon during COVID, where I could go into Walmart, pay $4 a booster pack, put it in the store for $6, and it would sell. But singles are where it's at. Previously, if your bankroll was large enough and you could do a lot of sealed product, the margin was good enough that as long as you were willing to front the capital, you could do decent on sealed. But singles is where it's been at for a very long time. I'm also very biased because of where I came from. We didn't doing just GPs. The only sealed we would get would be buying boxes from people that have got them off the prize wall or buying boxes from judges. And since we had to ship all of them, every box that we sold was an additional, $8 to $10, depending on how it was getting shipped, that we would lose shipping. So I've always been a very singles focused person. Maybe because that's how I started. It was just universally singles at shows, but also I think just people's tastes have changed as a lot of Magic players have aged. They've gotten away from wanting that hunt, and certainly people still enjoy opening sealed product, but people have moved much more towards I'd rather buy the playset of Flage from Image 3 that I need, as opposed to I'm going to buy my Modern Horizons 3 box, I'm going to get one Flage and then trade the rest in to get the rest. So I think part of the reason why singles are such a large part of what we do and what a lot of people do is that people's tastes have just changed. I think for a long time, people saw buying singles as kind of cheating because it was the hunt, opening product or trading, that it was an aspect that people really liked. But now, as people have gotten older, people have less time, and singles have also gotten much easier to do with the rise of marketplaces. Granted, those marketplaces leave a good bit to be desired in a lot of aspects, but it is much, much, much easier to do singles these days because worst case scenario, if the single doesn't sell in store, you can just put it on TCG and sell it there. Before TCG existed, or before it was as ubiquitous as it was, or when the standards for sellers to sell on TCG were higher, so fewer people could do it, dealing with singles, having capital invested in singles was much more risky, because if my locals don't want to buy the 4 Chalice of the Voids that I bought, my only option is to buy list those to a public buy list. Whereas now, worst case scenario, in order to have a seller account on TCG, there is no barrier to entry. So even if I have a store that's open Monday, Friday, and I can sell on TCG if my singles don't sell, and as long as I'm priced the same price as a giant seller, my card is going to show up right next to them because we're both priced at $29.99, let's say. So I think that's one of the currents that has pushed people more towards singles.
And how do you feel the success from your end has been with TCG Player? Because I like that example that you gave is, you're selling a card, and if you're both, you and another game store are priced at the same price, you're going to just show up next to each other. And I've seen that, constantly, regardless of, what card rarity, whether it's common, uncommon, you see that constantly, that multiple prices of from the same store, not from the same store, but from, various sellers. And I'm curious how the success is from your end selling on there, because you almost seem like when multiple stores are selling at the same price, there is no almost way to deviate, the value add there, because it's one card. There's not really, an upsell that you could do to distinguish yourself. So I'm curious what your success you've seen with TCG Player and how you handle those types of scenarios where everybody's like charging the same price for a card.
So TCG is difficult because they've demonstrated, I've been selling on TCG not as long as some people, but I've been interacting with TCG every day of my life for the past 6 years straight. TCG doesn't release numbers of any of their seller data or anything, but I've sold a lot of cards on TCG. There was a time where TCG actually cared about the quality of sellers on their platform. There was a time where you had to actually have a business license, or you had to have a corporate structure. You had to have an LLC, or you had a corporation of some kind. You had to have you couldn't just have a PayPal account. But over the years, TCG has removed any kind of barrier to entry to selling, which I realize I'm biased because I'm enfranchised and I have, it's not a problem for me to meet those requirements. But as they've, I think they would characterize it as they've democratized the platform. Always, whenever I've talked to them over the years and told them, why are you allowing people to sell on your platform? You buy in your mint card and it comes shuffle creased. And that's something that, to me, if I'm someone, I buy on TCG, that's going to make me not want to buy from TCG anymore. But their retort to me saying this is actively harming your platform to not have any standards for the people selling on the platform, in the same way that, let's say I go to if I go to an amusement park and I get food poisoning from one of the elephant ear stand, let's say, I might not want to go back to that amusement park because I had this bad experience, and that one part of, I guess, like State Fair is a better example. That one part of the State Fair might have made me not want to come back to the State Fair at all. Their retort to that is, well, the data shows that when someone has a couple cards from their binder to sell on TCG, when they sell a card, they end up buying more cards. Basically, that by allowing a wider range of people to sell on TCG, it's actually helping all of the other sellers because those people are then more likely to buy on TCG too. So personally, that argument is not persuasive to me, given the number of times, because doing GPs, doing SCGs, I talk to hundreds of Magic players each weekend, and doing that for a couple of years, it's thousands and thousands and thousands. And people would ask, what's your pricing model, etc. And I would mention that TCG is a part of that. The number of times someone has said, oh, I don't buy from TCG because I had this bad experience, or I don't buy from TCG because there's this or that aspect of the platform, is huge. I remember I bought a playset of Polluted Deltas this is back when Polluted Delta actually was worth something, on TCG in 2013. The seller canceled my order because they had underpriced them by like $20, and I was done. I didn't buy a single card on TCG until I started working for the company that sold on TCG. So I guess that was kind of a tangent, but there is no way to differentiate yourself because there is no brand loyalty on TCG. In the same way that if I want to buy 10 ballpoint pens on Amazon, I go on Amazon, maybe I buy from the buy box, maybe I look at the actual listings to see, because occasionally the buy box is more expensive than those other listings for various reasons. I find that a seller is selling them for $1 less. I buy it. I don't care where it's coming from. To me, I'm buying from Amazon. I'm not buying from that individual seller. And Amazon, if you ask them why can't, like, for example, you can't block buyers on Amazon. You can on TCG, but you can't block buyers on Amazon if you send a package, it's with signature confirmation, it shows delivered, the customer says, I never got it. You can't block that buyer. And Amazon's response to that is, well, you can't do that because they're not your customer, they're Amazon's customer. And the same thing is very true of TCG. People don't care who they're buying from. They just click on the smallest one or the cheapest one, or a lot of times, it's cheaper to buy 3 cards from the same person because you're getting around shipping and something. So the way to differentiate yourself is the breadth of your inventory. Theoretically, your feedback percentage, or TCG has the little thing with the number of sales, but those sales cap at 50,000. So there's no way for someone to tell whether you've done 50,010 sales or 375,000 sales, which is something that sellers have asked for a long time, because it would be a good way of differentiating yourself, but it's just not something that TCG is going to do for whatever reason. So in the grand scheme of things, there isn't really a way to differentiate yourself. It's just a free-for-all, basically.
We're going to take a quick break from this podcast to talk about our sponsor, Cardboard Shuffle. Cardboard Shuffle was our 10th podcast interview here at the Match Slip with store owner Mark. Mark has expanded his brand and has produced his own card sleeves called Shuffle Shields. Shuffle Shields come in packs of 100 premium matte card sleeves for standard size trading cards. They contain no PVC and are acid-free. I have 17 packs of Shuffle Shields card sleeves to give away to listeners of the podcast and followers of the Match Slip on social media. Requests for a free pack of card sleeves shipped for free to you will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. To receive your free pack of Shuffle Shields, you'll need to send a screenshot that you're following Cardboard Shuffle on Facebook to frank@thematchslip.com. Good luck, and back to the episode.
I feel one of the ways that you yourself actually differentiate yourself for your store as a whole is, I know you mentioned you do go to conventions and you'll vend at those conventions, and your past experience with doing GPs and doing the SCG circuit and whatnot. I'm curious how that has brought in maybe not only new players, but business as well, that's maybe translated to online sales when they do occur. If you felt that doing those conventions has been a value add for you in your store.
In terms of marketing, somewhat, I found that locally, there's a lot of brand loyalty, and it's a lot because locally it's a lot about getting into the habit of going to a certain place, which is part of the reason why we're in this physical location, because people have been coming to this physical location for probably about 10 years now. So people are just used to coming here. And luckily, we've been able to continue on a legacy that MTG First was a place where you could come in with a $20,000 collection and sell it, no problem. So that's luckily something we've been able to continue. So locally, there's a lot. For online, it's really difficult. The big four retailers, Card Kingdom, SCG, Cool Stuff, and I guess Channel Fireball doesn't exist anymore. But they have a very strong stranglehold on online business. So it's hard. Occasionally there's some amount of marketing done at those shows that results in orders, but honestly, the biggest benefit outside of, because mostly it's about buying cards, selling cards pretty easy. You just put them on the internet and someone buys them. If they don't sell, you make them a little cheaper. Most of the business that's drummed up from doing those shows outside of those shows is honestly people selling their cards. I'll get an email saying, "Hey, you were at whatever event, SCG Pittsburgh, and I sold you this and this and this. Now I have these other things I want to sell. I had a positive experience. Your prices were fair, so on and so forth." That's the major draw from those events, outside of just buying cards from a pond outside of the pond that we're in locally. But it's really hard to get people to change their online shopping habits, because honestly, the larger super giants have done such a good job of creating an experience that's easy, having everything, having a fully fleshed out inventory where I can buy the Earthcraft that I need for my deck, but I can also buy sleeves for my deck and also my favorite 10 basic forests from Odyssey. They've just made that so easy and so efficient. Granted, they charge a premium for that, but they've made it so easy and so efficient that it's really hard to pry people away from either buying from their local store because it's convenient, or going to a supergiant because the supergiant actually has everything.
Thus far with being in business, what has been your biggest lesson learned from your point of opening the store till now?
Be willing to take big swings and be willing to just dump product. There have been a lot of opportunities that I haven't gotten as deep into as I could have that would have gone pretty well. So I think it's be comfortable with risk, because this, unlike owning a 7-Eleven where there's probably thousands of pages written on how to efficiently run a convenience store, the supply chain is all figured out. The industry, at least from the outside, me looking in, seems relatively solved. You put your drinks in the back, so people have to walk by the ho-hos and the ding-dongs that they might buy because you walk into the store. You don't walk in thinking, I'm going to buy this random pack of gum, but I'm going to buy, I need something to drink. But this industry is very much not solved. So, and there's a lot of randomness to things in terms of sets that are coming out, cards that could be, as a store that does as much in singles as we do, the singles prices really matter. So is a card getting reprinted? Is a card coming out that just eclipses it? So being comfortable with risk is a big one. And at the same time, being willing to just cut your losses and move on from something, in terms whether it's a class of cards that you've had for a while, whether it's product that isn't selling, whether it's whatever it is. I think the days, especially in Magic, where you could just sit on things forever and eventually they'll trend up, where your box of Dissension uncommons, in 5 years there will be an uncommon in there that's randomly worth $4. Those days are over. So you just have to keep going and be fine breaking even or losing a little.
And how many employees does your store currently hire, and what is your day-to-day like on top of that?
So I think we're at 8 employees at the moment. I have 2 or 3 that are permanently on our online operation. So all of the online platforms we sell on, and who also do a lot of what we call processing. So take the intake, split it into where it's going, grade it, get it in the system, all of that. And then I have a handful of employees that are more customer facing. But overall, I think we're at 8.
Do you give specific assignments to each of those employees, or to outside of the online employees who are handling online orders, but for people in the store handling day-to-day related operations, do you have them siloed off into specialties, or does everybody generally do the same thing, helping people get cards, talking to people, assisting with events and stuff like that?
So everybody is trained to do, outside of some management tasks, everybody is trained to do every task outside of buying. There's a subset of employees that have been trained to buy, but outside of that, everybody can do everything. And it's, in terms of the individual tasking, it comes down to some is the employee's strengths and weaknesses, also their game knowledge. So for example, we have Yu-Gi-Oh! Tuesday and Thursday night. Tuesday and Thursday, the people that have actually played Yu-Gi-Oh! In the past are the customer-facing people that work. So it varies a lot day to day, but everybody is outside of the divide between the online operation and the in-store side. Everybody is trained on how to do everything, and it is just kind of they get tasks based on what's needed that day, I guess.
That makes sense. And from your standpoint, what are your primary responsibilities these days? Are you in the store all the time?
So most of what I do is the general business and management kind of things that anybody running any kind of business would do. Cash flow, different kinds of record keeping, tax stuff. That also things that are event related, dealing with a lot of online relationship building, soliciting buys, doing things that the store alone wouldn't generate, dealing with some of the more particular clients. But from generally, I'm in this room doing either the generic business and management stuff or working on deals with various people, whether it's buying cards or selling cards or planning this or that trip or event or anything like that.
And with managing cash flow, like you were alluding to, that one of the things that any business could do is bring in new customers, bring in new players, as an example. So I was curious what steps you guys take to try to facilitate that. And I know it's, you're going to have your regulars and things like that, but I was curious, like, what strategies you all employ to try to bring in new players that may, be new to gaming or that may just not know about you guys.
So some of it is doing smaller local events that people that are less enfranchised or more kind of on the periphery of a game would attend. So, for example, there's a local guy who once a year he runs a little Pokemon convention called Baltimore PokeCon, and that draws people from across Maryland, a little bit of Virginia. So we do those just because Pokemon people specifically are less likely than like a Magic player to branch out and go to other stores. So a lot of those events are just about visibility, letting people know that we're here, and also showing at these shows, showing that we're a place where if you want a 25-cent Zigzagoon, you can get your 25-cent Zigzagoon. If you want to sell your $500 ETB, you can do that here. If you're trying to find a highly graded Shining Gyarados or something, that's something that we could have. So smaller local events is one way. The other way is a lot of word of mouth, to be honest. The number of people that come in who are like, I've driven past this 10 times. I didn't realize there was a store here. Or have been, my friend told me about this store. That's where a lot of it comes from. Granted, that's not something that we can really do anything to facilitate, but most of the new people coming in are coming in because they know someone who's been here, and some just traditional marketing, Google ads, Facebook, stuff like that.
So what are some of the things you feel, and it could be one thing, it could be multiple, that you feel make your store unique compared to maybe other stores in the area based on your experience, with conventions, what you've seen other stores doing?
So I think what makes us unique is, first of all, just our fixtures, I guess. I grew up in stores that were maybe sports card stores, places where playmats didn't exist back then, but if playmats existed back then, you would use a playmat because you didn't want to get a splinter from the table. That kind of, old, musty, kind of card shop, Simpsons card shop guy kind of place. We've made the store is the total opposite of that. My goal fixture-wise is for someone to walk in and feel like they're walking into more kind of like a boutique, I guess. Granted, it's not super small. We play space for up to about 100 people. So, but I think that's one thing that sets us apart from a lot of shops is just we're new, remodeled, renovated. But what really sets us apart is, at least in Maryland, buy and sell anyone in the area. Our single selection is deeper and broader than any other store by a factor of probably 2 or 3. Our bankroll is larger. There are a lot of collections that come in where I look at the collection, we offer, let's say, $4,500. The next highest offer is $2,500 because $2,500 was probably what they had in the safe that day. So what sets us apart is our ability to just churn through cards. I think part of that comes from the legacy of this physical place, but also the mindset that myself and some of the people that work for me that also worked for the previous company, where we had to churn through cards because we needed to sell the cards that we bought last week at the GP to get money to buy at the next GP. So that mindset of always having to churn, go means that we're always selling cards. We're always buying cards. And that's something that really drives us. So I think that's the main thing that sets us apart is just we pay more than anybody else. Our prices are better than anyone else, and we have more stuff than anyone else, which is maybe a little crass, but is the truth.
This episode of The Match Slip is sponsored by Crash CityCon, Roanoke, Virginia's premier gaming and fan convention. It's tabletop gaming at its best. In addition to role-playing games, board games, there are vendors, and so much more. Play with some of the top game masters in the area, enjoy a casual game in their open gaming area, or learn to play games you always wanted to play. Attend Crash CityCon August 23rd through the 25th of 2024 at the Berglund Center Special Events Center. You could check out more information at crashcitycon.com.
What are some projects you're currently working on that can either be something current or anything that you view as like a future goal that you have for Level Up Games?
So one of the expansions that I would like to do and that we've started to work on is moving away from being solely focused on Magic events. So just SEG cons, Magic Fests, things like that. And instead doing more, because also just in terms of the share of our business that's Magic versus others, Magic is still the largest by a good margin, but it's shrunk relative to other games. So doing more general conventions, doing Comic-Cons, doing even sports card shows. There's a lot of non-sports cards things that happen at those shows too. Doing more general collectible shows. That's something that I want to do more because Magic is just part of what it is we do. And a lot of those other games are much less industrialized is one way to say it. The market's a little more kind of primal, I guess, and open. So that's something I would like to do more. Also, deepening the website is a big thing for me. Partially because the platforms are so unreliable and in a lot of cases decrepit. But those are two big axes, is doing more non-Magic and more general collectibles, and then also just beefing up our technology, making the website better, having more cards. That's ultimately my mindset is the goal is always to just buy more cards and sell more cards. So things that allow us to buy more cards, like doing these conventions, doing some more social media stuff, like we started doing. I'm kind of a dinosaur. I'm not really great at social media stuff, but doing more of like new media, TikToks, things like that is something that we started to do a little more that's borne some fruit. So those are the main goal is just buy more cards, sell more cards, I guess, which is not a grand vision. It's not a huge thing to aspire to, but ultimately, I think what the most important thing to deliver to clients is a nice place to play and a place where they can buy any card they want and sell any card they want. So just continuing to do that and expanding into doing more games more deeply is kind of the trajectory that we're on.
And speaking of your place, with my final question here, if you can give us, like, I know it might be a little difficult to do, but like a virtual tour almost of your store. Like if you could just describe for people listening, they walk into the front door of your store. How do you have it laid out?
So you walk in the front door, there's a little kind of entryway. You walk by 3 cases. You walk through by a one-piece case, a Lorcana case, a case of graded Pokemon cards. Then behind that, there's the staff area where there's desks and stuff for people to process cards. You walk through a little kind of archway, and then it opens up into a large play area. On the left, you have the play area that can seat, it's comfortably 65 or 64-ish people, but it can, I think fire code is 95 people. So there's that. There's a little open space for people to walk through back and forth. And then all the way down the right side of the store are more showcases that go from Magic high-end to more normal Magic cards, a couple cases of Pokemon, and then cases of Yu-Gi-Oh! All the way at the end. And a wall of sealed product all the way down that back, all the way down the wall down there. So it's half the store is retail space, half the store is play space, I would say. It's a pretty simple layout, but it's functional. It maximizes the amount of display space there is, but also the shelves are like nice dark wood, and it was quite the process, but the brackets are these like pipes painted in like dark black and stuff. So it looks, I like the way it looks. It looks kind of sleek. But that's the general layout. It's relatively simple.
Awesome. No, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And as we wrap up here, Luke, I appreciate you coming on the show today. Where could people find more out about the store? And if they wanted to connect with the store in any way, what would be some places they could do so?
So the website is levelupgamesmd.com. There's also, we're on Facebook, Level Up Games Maryland, and on all of the other platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, it's all Level Up Games Maryland. That's mostly it. Pretty much anywhere that you can look up a store, we are under either Level Up Games or Level Up Games Maryland. So
awesome. I'll be sure to link everybody out to that in the show notes. And I wanted to thank you again, Luke, for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure having you on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And for everybody else listening, if you'd like to check out the stores I visit in person, you could do so at thematchlip.com/newsletter. And with that being said, we'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care.